Today is Wednesday, May 12, 2021. Roland Martin Unfiltered, broadcasting live from Jack Yates High School here in Houston, Texas, where earlier today I awarded two students $1,000 scholarships. We'll show you some of that also. We'll talk to Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis, as well as State Senator Boris Miles about Republican efforts to enact voter suppression here in this state. They are specifically targeting folks here in Harris County. They do not like how black folks have been turning out to the polls, and they are trying to actually rig the election. So we'll talk to them about that. Also, we'll talk to a state rep and a TV anchor out of Dallas, Tashara Parker, about the Crown Act. And that bill went to the floor of the Texas House that will outlaw hair discrimination. We'll talk with both of them about that as well. Plus, NextDoor is a thriving social community. We'll talk to one of the leaders about NextDoor and exactly how that could impact you in your life. You can actually get to know who your neighbors are. Folks, we've got a jam-packed show, lots to talk about on Roland Martin Unfiltered, broadcasting live from Houston, Texas. It's time to bring the funk. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the biz, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time, and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
All right, folks, we're broadcasting live from Jack Yates High School here in Houston's 3rd Ward. This is my alma mater, where a little bit earlier today I awarded the first Roland Martin scholarships to 2 of the students here, and so we're glad to be here. And also, of course, we'll be talking to a number of top elected officials here in this area. Also, folks, this is go to the drone shot. We're also the campus of, I graduated from here, so did George Floyd. What you're seeing right now is the George Floyd mural that was painted here right in front of the high school. And this, of course, was in honor of George Floyd, who was killed, of course, in Minneapolis just a year ago on May 25th. George Floyd played football here at Jack Yates, and so this is one of the ways they honored him here. This is literally painted on the street, and you see there, that was his football jersey that George Floyd actually wore when he played football here at Jack Yates High School. And so we wanted to, of course, be able to broadcast this show and give you a sense of that as well, because so much, of course, has happened in this country in the wake of his death. One of the things that we saw, of course, in the election in 2020, we saw a significant turnout as folks went to the polls to elect President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris to their offices. In addition, Democrats took control of the United States Senate. John Ossoff, Raphael Warnock winning those Senate seats there in Georgia. That is what has ticked off Republicans. Today, Republicans threw out Liz Cheney, the number 3 in the leadership in the House, because of her criticism of Donald Trump. That's how they do it. But what's been happening in the state level, we have seen massive voter suppression in the state, and especially here in Texas. Republicans here, angry with turnout here in Harris County, where Houston is located, Dallas County as well, changing the laws to rig the elections. That's what they have been doing. The evil folks have been busy in the state capital of Austin, Texas. And let's go live to Austin right now, where Houston State Senator Boris Miles is right now. Senator Miles, my alpha brother, glad to have you on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
It's good to see you, Brother Martin. It's really good to see you back on the yard, my brother.
Indeed. Always glad to be back at JY in the Tray. Let's talk about, again, what y'all have been fighting in Austin. It has been a whole lot of evil taking place as Republicans, again, claimed safe elections when it happened, but now they're passing all of these laws. Why?
Well, I can tell you why, Brother Martin. Because we increased our voting. We had 1.6 million people turn out in our last voting cycle. We had a very a team led by a young brother by the name of Chris Hollins, who was our county clerk for the county of Harris. And he and his team did a very good job of thinking outside the box with new things that we could get to turn our people out, like 24-hour voting, drive-through voting. These things increased our numbers. So with the increase of numbers for the Harris County area, it really got the attention of the Republican Party. You got to understand, Harris County probably has one of the top, within the top 5 block of African-American Democratic voters in the country. So it put fear in their hearts. It put fear in their hearts to the fact that they tried to investigate and claim that some of our elected leaders, our great elected leaders in the Harris County area, such as, I think he's going to be on with us, Rodney Ellis, Commissioner Rodney Ellis, our great Sheila Jackson Lee, and myself. They hired a private investigator, Brother Martin, at the tune of $250,000 to find evidence that we had committed voter fraud. After that $250 he spent on nothing was produced out of it. Brother Martin, there is no organized voter fraud going on here in Harris County. There is no organized voter fraud going on in the state of Texas. What's happening is we're waking people up. We're doing things that's innovative and getting people to the polls. And just because the state codes, election codes, doesn't speak to a matter such as drive-through voting, does not mean it's illegal. They're trying to make it illegal in this SB 7. That's what's going on now. So we're here doing a stellar job, continue to shake people up, to get them out to vote, to make sure they exercise their right to vote, to keep our democracy strong, and we've gotten their attention, brother. It's just that simple.
Senator Miles, I've had folks hit me up on social media, and they've said, "Hey, Democrats aren't fighting hard enough." There's a stat that I came across last night, though, that people need to understand. Of the 99 legislative bodies in the United States, Republicans control 61 of them. And so for the people out there who complain about voting, the people out there who say it's not important, why y'all doing this, again, it's hard to sit here and stop Republican-led voter suppression when they control 61 out of 99. That means that 2/3 of all legislative chambers in the United States are controlled by Republicans. There are 31 Republican governors. They control 30 both chambers. And so that's the difficulty here in Texas. Democrats were 5 seats away in 2020 from taking control of the House. They were not able to do so. And so when you're trying to deal with gerrymandering and voter suppression, it's a little hard to do it when you don't have control of at least one of the bodies.
That's correct. And, you know, my Republican colleagues get very offended when I refer to this as Jim Crow legislation. Well, dog, that's what it is. It's intimidation, it's suppression. You know, too much power can be corruptive. And like you said, they have the control now, but they're trying to hold on to it because they now see, in the wake of all the social injustice that we're dealing with, they now see that they're doing what I said on the Senate floor in my debate. They kicked the bear. And I'm hoping and praying, Roland, and going to be working toward it, Brother Martin, that we not only turn out more young voters, not only increase our numbers from 1.6 to 2.6, okay? Because now's the time that we, as people of color, African-American, Latinx, Asian, now's the time that we have to stand up because they are trying to deteriorate our democracy for what we made so many advances in. So it's time to stand up. We're going to actually be working harder here in Harris County than we did in the last election cycle. And I'm going to see to it, and you'll be proud of your old hometown.
We talk about the voter suppression bill, the census, gerrymandering. Again, Republicans in Texas refused to really put money into the census. I was reading one story. Democrats should be making gains in Texas because of the increase in the Hispanic population. Republicans are going to use that to gerrymander to give them more seats. That's the thing that I keep trying to also explain to people that they don't seem to understand, that lack of voting, not filling out the census, goes hand in hand with gerrymandering.
Right, and as you know, we redistrict every 10 years here in Texas, and we're in the middle of a redistricting right now. Our census numbers are late, as you alluded to. We will probably have to come back for a special session in September, October, November sometime once we've received our numbers. And you got to understand something else. Because they have the leadership now in this building, they will be drawing the lines. We'll have very little input onto what our district lines look like, our congressional lines look like. And I can tell you, like you said, we're supposed to get 3 new congressional seats. It's predicted. Now they're saying 2. And I can tell you that they are going to try to use that against us and hold it over our head. And we will have very little say, Brother Martin, in what our districts look like. But quite frankly, I can't see how they can gerrymander any more some of our minority districts. I mean, my district goes from all the way north to south of the Beltway 8, as you know, all the way down to Rosharon, Texas. So what are they going to take me to, Galveston?
This is what happens again when you have power, and this is why I am consistently trying to explain to folks who watch this show, we cannot ignore voting on the federal and the state level. For the people who are watching who then say, man, I don't see any policies being enacted, this is what happens when you don't have power. And so when they are in power, listen, 85% of the people who voted for Donald Trump were white. The Republican Party is a white party. 61% of the people who voted for Joe Biden are white. That means that 39% of Joe Biden's vote totals came from people of color, minority voters. That's what we need folks to understand with what's going on here. And so for the people who yell and scream, voting is a waste of time, but then they turn around and complain about lack of policy, well, guess what? You now see what happens when you don't vote, so you can't act like voting has no direct correlation with policy.
Brother Martin, you're exactly right. Elections have consequences. Not voting have consequences. And what we're suffering through right now, the lack of leadership and the lack of, I've been serving for 15 years. And in 15 years, Brother Martin, I've never served in the majority. I can't wait till that day comes. But our people have to realize elections have consequences. And all those brothers that are telling you, I'm not seeing no serious policy getting moved, I don't see anything happening for our communities and our people. Well, you know what? As long as we're having to push the ball uphill, and as long as we're in the minority and double minorities, we're going to continue to have, what I call Jim Crow legislation popping up, and they're going to continue to push it as far as they can. I mean, right here in Texas, I think you want to talk about that too. We're now going to have something called free carry, what they call unconstitutional carry. I don't call it unconstitutional carry, Brother Martin, because it has nothing to do with the Constitution. It has to do with this being the state of Texas. And when I say the state of Texas, they're opening up the doors and claiming this is the Wild Wild West. And anybody can carry a concealed weapon. And it doesn't have to be concealed. Anybody can carry a firearm, Brother Martin. They can carry it into police stations. They can carry them into the churches now. They can carry them into universities. You can be a felon. You can be a criminal. And you're able to carry, and you'll be able to carry a firearm. Now I want you, as I explained in my debate to my colleague, my white colleague, imagine what that's going to do to communities like what you and I grew up in. Brothers freely walking around, brothers and sisters freely walking around with firearms on the outside of their shirts. Imagine how much probable cause that's going to give police officers to now start, stopping people and pulling them over. And again,
this is why we emphasize. This is why we emphasize that. Look, you can sit here and yell, scream, tweet, and whine all day on social media about voting and how it means nothing. But then if you don't, that's why I simply say shut the hell up. Texas State Senator Boris Miles, I certainly appreciate it, sir. Thank you so very much. Keep up the fight in Austin.
Will do, brother. Good to see you.
Likewise, thanks a lot. Let me go to my panel. A. Scott Bolden, former chair of the National Bar Association Political Action Committee. Monique Presley, lawyer, crisis manager. Also joining us is Pastor Lee May, Transforming Faith Church, former CEO of DeKalb County, Georgia. Glad to have all of you here. Scott, that point. Well, first of all, let me do this here. I'm in Texas, so Monique, I'll go ahead and start with you first because you're down the street. Monique's not here. Okay. Well, first of all, Scott, get over it. But, Scott, you lucked up. She's not here. So she'll be here a little bit later. So you lucked up. So shut up. So, again, this is the thing that I keep – again, there are people who sit here all day. And they talk on social media, and they whine, they complain, they sit here and say, I mean, I got these fools, oh, man, you sitting here, shilling for the Democratic Party, about voting for Biden. And I'm sitting there going, okay, take your pick. You got one party that wants to make it difficult to vote, wants to get rid of curbside vote, not wants to. They have outlawing curbside voting. They're outlawing drive-through voting. They're now putting ballot drop boxes inside of voting locations. They're cutting the hours of early voting locations. They're changing all of the rules. Democrats support expanding voter access, expanding same-day voter registration. But then you got these fools saying, oh, I can't believe you were sitting there telling folk should vote for Joe Biden. It was two choices, Trump, Biden. Which one your punk asses wanted?
Well, you certainly make great point. I think the most telling statistic, Roland, is the fact that the Republicans control the majority of the state houses and the majority of the state Senate and state rep houses across the country. You cannot forget about voting at that local level because you see now where we're gerrymandering, where the census has come out, and you're going to see them stretch out. It's the most anti-democratic thing after you lose an election to then want to have fewer people vote and suppress more voters as opposed to wanting to expand your voting base to get more votes than the Democrat. But the Republicans know their ideas, their legislation, and their views of the world just aren't that popular. And so they're left in this with this power vacuum. And the power vacuum says voter suppression, gerrymandering, and let's lock out and make it difficult for as many people of color or Democratic voters, wherever they may be in whatever state, let's shut them down. Because remember, the big lie is the narrative of the big lie is being driven not by GOP voters, but was driven by Donald Trump and other congressional leaders and state leaders. And so then the reaction was our GOP voters listened to that leadership and then said, we lack confidence in the results. You didn't lose confidence in the results. You lost confidence that you could win, and you're upset about not being able to win. And expanding the voter base only hurts your chances to win in the future.
This is my Leah, I'll go to you. I mean, this is the thing that, and again, I keep trying to connect voting, who wins, with public policy.
Yeah. Right.
What you are seeing is what happens when Republicans win state rep, state Senate seats. And for the people who seem not to understand this, the state rep and the state senators, they control the lines that are drawn in the state. So then they are able, when we say gerrymandering, they are able to now draw lines that make it easier for them to win, for Democrats to lose, to disenfranchise voters who did not vote for Republicans. And so even if you have a massive Democratic turnout, and we've seen this in Wisconsin and other states, they still maintain power because they have been able to gerrymander the districts. And the Supreme Court, the conservative Supreme Court, said we don't get involved in political disputes. That's up to the state Supreme Court. Well, guess what? those are gerrymandered. So Republicans control the state Supreme Courts. So you're never going to be able to get out of this box. And so black power, Latino power is diluted because of gerrymandering. And for the folks who say don't vote, you are making this possible.
Well, my good Alfred brother, I'm going to say amen and let's go home.
Oh,
you
my
said
goodness gracious.
Oh,
More Alpha.
You have
Dang.
said it all, brother. It's ridiculous, man. It is the quintessential example of moving the goalposts. You don't like your election results, the fact that you lost, and so you're going to change the rules, man. That's exactly what happened in Georgia. Is happening in Texas right now. It happened in Florida, and they won the election in Florida, the presidential election, and so many other seats. But they see the writing on the wall, and they keep changing the rules to benefit them. And what are they doing? They're prolonging their power and influence by changing these rules. And let me also connect something to what you just said. When they tore up the Voting Rights Act some years ago, when they tore that up and they removed the formula of determining which states has to have pre-clearance before you can change rules, let me tell you what happened in Georgia. When they continued to gerrymander those districts, they put all the black folk in competing districts, and then they said, well, we wanted to make sure that that our current black elected officials are safe in their seats. They put them all together, right? So that we couldn't be competitive in other districts all throughout the state. And so they use the Voting Rights Act, and they reference the Voting Rights Act to actually prove their point of why they put black folk in the same districts, quote unquote, to call it safe for them, man. It's just ridiculous. In Georgia, you know, our current governor, man, who signed that suppressive voter legislation, man, a picture paints 1,000 words, right? In that private room, in his room, a room full of white men. It's nothing wrong with white men. It's a problem with all white men in the same room, right? And standing up underneath a painting that pictures a plantation, man. If that didn't tell you all that you needed to know about what was going on, all along the while, a black woman is knocking on the door trying to get in right outside the governor's office, a state legislator that says, hey, I want to get in, I want to talk. And they arrest her. Man, if we're not back in the Jim Crow era, man, I don't know what else is, man. And unfortunately, you got games that are being played, man, with our voting rights. We support greater voter access, right? And anything that even looks like it is suppressing or reducing or limiting voter access to the ballot, man, we got to reject it, man. But they know what they're doing. It's a reason why the governor in Georgia signed that piece of legislation the same day it was passed. It's a reason. Man, that's unheard of. Man, the governor is still signing legislation, and our legislature has been out of session now for weeks and weeks now. The governor never signs legislation like that, let alone when it's so controversial like this, man. We gotta continue to fight, man. We gotta continue to fight for federal legislation that is expanding greater voter access and restricting these voter suppressive actions that we've been seeing in Georgia and Florida and Texas and other places all across the country.
Let's talk about Arizona, folks, where the governor there signed a new voting bill over the objections of many Democrats. It's going to purge more than 100,000 Latinos for the voting rolls. Listen to this.
This bill is simple. It's all about election integrity. If an individual is signed up to automatically be mailed an early ballot and then stops voting entirely for a full 4 years, their county recorder will ask them if they still want to automatically be mailed a ballot. If they respond, they'll continue receiving one. If they don't respond, here's what happens. They will remain a registered voter. They can still request an early ballot, and they can also show up at the polls in person on Election Day. Compare this to California. They actually remove voters without any notice at all or opportunity to remain on the list. Our law is better and provides more accessible ballot access than California and many other places that opponents of this bill tend to point to as pillars of democracy, like New York and Washington, D.C. This change will ensure that active voters continue to receive a ballot and free up resources for county recorders to use on priorities like election security and voter education. Let's be clear. Despite all the deceptive and heated rhetoric being used by some partisan activists to lobby against this reform, not a single Arizona voter will lose their right to vote as a result of this new law.
Well, here's the deal, Scott. Why in the hell have the new law? See, this all is election integrity. It's all a lie. All we are seeing is a massive lie because Donald Trump has Republicans supporting the big lie.
Lies, lies, and all lies.
I mean, just what it
No,
is.
we can't, we can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Scott,
here's the
I think you're
deal.
muted for some reason.
Can you hear me?
I wish
We
your
can hear you
cappers
now.
know how to use your computers. Now we can hear you.
Okay. So look at what you just ran a clip on Arizona, right? So Arizona, if
Right.
all of that's true, then why do you need the bill, right? So if you can still be on if you still vote, if you can still get a ballot, then why are you passing legislation to purge hundreds of thousands of people from the rolls if there's going to be a follow-up question, and if you say yes, then you can continue to vote? It's a solution in search of a problem. But they know that if they purge, that people aren't going to re-sign up, that perhaps they may not get that Q&A from the Secretary of State. It creates all kinds of potential problems. And then here's the kicker in Arizona. If those people aren't voting and they're on the absentee ballot rolls, then what difference does it make if they're not voting anyway? And if you call them and ask them, they can still vote and they'll still be able to get an absentee ballot. It borders on the nonsensical. So that's why Arizona is so onerous, because they're creating these onerous procedures for voters, knowing that Hispanic voters, Black voters, people of color voters are going to get short shrift on it.
Exactly, man. And the reality.
Go ahead.
Yeah, man, I was going to say, man, you're absolutely right, man. It's like they're looking for a solution to a place where there's not a problem. Look, when you hear them talk about election integrity, election security, man, just say lie right after that, right? Because here's the reality. When any company really focuses in on security and integrity of their systems, guess what? You don't hear anything about it. Colonial Pipeline. I'm down in Georgia, man. We got lines waiting on gas stations right now trying to get some gas, right, because of this ransomware hack that is going on with Colonial Pipeline. I guarantee you they're not projecting to the world the next measure of security that they're going to put in place to prevent this from happening, man. Any level of security or integrity with that system, man, has nothing to do with what they're doing. But I'll tell you what they are doing. They are taking the number of people that voted in 2020 and 2021 during the special election in Georgia, and they're saying, okay, we're going to make sure it's going to be less people that are available to vote now. We're going to make it more difficult now for them to vote now. We're going to put special things in place, special obstacles in place, so that it'll make it more difficult for them to vote. What does that sound like? It sounds like Jim Crow era laws. It sounds like a literacy test. It sounds like a poll tax. It sounds like a voting test. Measures that were put in place that didn't say black folk. It didn't say Negroes or anything else. It said it had their different things that were in place that would cause that were intended to reduce the number of black people that were available to vote, man. That's why it's so similar to what's going on in Jim Crow, because they're intentionally putting in place measures that are hindering people's ability to vote, man. It's as simple as that.
But Roland, here's one last quick point.
Folks,
361 bills, voter suppression bills, in and around the country, right? In not one of those jurisdictions is there empirical data to support that we have a voter election security issue. The data doesn't exist. And so it's all political rhetoric on the GOP side. Think about it. 361 bills, no empirical data to support that there's voter security issues.
And that's why it's called the big lie. Folks, we're gonna come back to this topic in just a moment. Let's now go back to Austin, where the Texas House will soon be considering a bill that could outlaw discrimination when it comes to hair. A House Bill first of all, look at the number here. It's called House Bill 392. The Crown Act. We've seen other states pass this. California was the first that outlawed discrimination based upon someone's hair. There have been a number of folks who have been fighting this. This impact African Americans more so than anyone else. Joining us right now from Austin, Texas, is Representative Retta Bowers, and also my fellow Texas A&M Aggie, Tashara Parker, who is an anchor at WFAA Dallas Channel 8. She has been quite vocal about this and talking about natural hair and her buns and her bun movement. And so we'll get to that in a second. Representative Bowers, I want to start with you. I mean, this is an issue that black women face. I remember I was engaged in a debate with a Republican. They were trying to tell me there's no discrimination in America. Then I went to the EEOC website and came across a story of a black woman who was a psychologist. She applied for a job at the Veterans Affairs there in Virginia. Impeccable credentials, great interview. When she walks out, a white guy on the panel says, I just don't like her hair. I did not like her cornrows. She didn't get the job. She sued. She won. Taxpayers had to pay nearly $100,000. Had nothing to do with her credentials, nothing to do with her knowledge. He didn't like her hair. That is what a lot of black folks are facing. We've had cases here in Texas where young men have been kicked out of school, forced to cut their hair because it didn't abide by someone's idea of what's acceptable.
That's right. Thank you, Roland. And, it's great to have a moment to chat with you about it, but you're exactly right. We have plenty of women, men and children who are facing this type of hair discrimination. Some of those people were here in Austin with us talking about their experiences. You talked about Tashara's bun ministry and all that she's done. We had young Maddox Cozart. He was here at the press conference. His mom, they're still continuing to take him out to check his hair on a daily basis. He was in school suspension. We had Dakari Davis, who spoke at the press conference. He's a Dallas police officer. I do believe Tashara did a interview with him recently, and he cut his hair. He wore his hair in cornrows, and he cut his hair to keep his job, keep his family fed, to keep a roof over their heads. And it is racism that we as a people are still facing. And as you said, just because they didn't like someone's hair. The day that we got a hearing and were able to lay out House Bill 392, to me was movement for this bill that I really didn't think we would see. So I was elated at the idea that we had a chance to begin this conversation here in Texas, and begin is really what I want to say, because I really thought the press conference was all that we would be able to do. But having that conversation, starting the conversation was wonderful. I knew that we were also going to be having to do a lot of education and awareness. But what I started to say was, after the layout, I had a longtime Texas House male member come up to me in a very apologetic way and say that, he had no idea. More than one of them said they didn't have any idea this was still going on. But in turn, he apologized and said, hey, Retta, I'm guilty of this type of discrimination. So it was voted out, Roland, 12 unanimously, 12 ayes to 0 nays. And I believe my desk mate even said we were all shocked that we got it out 12-0. It went through calendars last week, and y'all know this is way late in the game. It got set last, I guess, Tashara, I text you early in the week that it was about 9:30. The calendars committee met earlier this week, and it got set for Wednesday. So today, go ahead, Roland.
I want to pull Tashara in. You mentioned Tashara. I want to pull her in. Tashara, look, this has been a battle a lot of black women on television have had to deal with for a very long time, and it's only recent, very recent, and I'm talking about the last 2 or 3 years where you've seen more black women being allowed to wear natural hair on television because what we're dealing with, and this is what people have to understand, these are examples of the stuff that black people have to deal with just to be able to coexist in America. We have had to conform to white standards when it comes to hair, clothing, how we talk, how we act. And this, I mean, you would think, why do you need to have a bill to say, don't screw me because of my hair? But that's the reality we're living in.
Yeah, it's sad in 2021 that we need any type of legislation to make us be allowed. And it's sad that we even have to say allowed, right, to coexist in these exact same spaces. It's really because of that Eurocentric standard of beauty that has been perpetuated, not just in our industry, but in many industries, but certainly for women that have to be on, television and broadcast journalism all the time. And so you're right. As of the last few years, yes, we've had women well before the last few years wearing their natural hair on TV. But I think the movement has really gained steam. The Crown Act certainly playing a role in that, in gaining steam across the country and even across the world, because I'm actually participating in something called World Afro Day. But anyways, I do feel like, in the last few years, people have become more aware of it. And I think that's one of the reasons that I wanted to get involved, because it wasn't until I got into this industry that I realized that me changing my hair was considered a thing, right? Before then, Black women, we change our hair all the time. These are styles that have been around for years. They're coming back in different forms, but these are styles that have been around for hundreds of years. And so that's why I thought it was important to get involved with it, because, that Eurocentric standard of beauty that you alluded to is something that's been around for far too long. And I feel like it's time for us to step up and just be able to do our jobs without being worried about, how we wear our hair to work. We're going to be able to do the same type of work. And so, yeah, I agree with that. I think time's up for all of that. And I think right now is the time to do it, especially with this legislation being discussed right now.
Representative Bowers, so it came out of committee. When do you think it will be approved by the full House and then go to the Senate?
Okay, so if we can get it heard, it's on the calendar right now. I want y'all to know we're on page 16. The Crown Act, House Bill 392, is on page 16. And as it stands right now, we are at the top of page 4, possibly. Yeah. So today it won't be heard. I don't believe it's going to be heard. And, this may be because bills can only be heard on the floor up until midnight tomorrow. We may have, I hate to say it, but we may have pushed it as far as we're going to get it. But these are, I listened to some of the things y'all were saying earlier. These are the type of games that are played. So, in my mind, I sit on the floor or in my daily comings and goings and think sometimes, did they just say, hey, let her bill be heard, set it for a committee hearing, get it out, we'll get it on the calendar, but that's all it's going to do. Because we know this is way late in the game. I mean, the clock is ticking.
Right. Final point here, Tashara. We are perpetually having to educate white folks. White folks in this country don't like 1619 Project, but this is the kind of stuff you heard the representative say this, white colleagues saying, oh my God, I had no idea, and admitting that they actually did it themselves. And that's the whole deal. I mean, so when people have this notion that, no, we're all on the same page, like, no, we are constantly having to educate white folks about their racism when they even and this happens with white liberals. This happens with folk who say, oh, no, I'm not racist. Yeah, but when you don't want to hire somebody because of their hair, hell, we looking at your strangy ass hair and not sitting there wondering why you got a job.
Oh, Roland, let me be clear. You know, I'm still getting emails till this very day from folks basically saying, hey, I'm tired of y'all talking about black hair and professionalism, but we won't stop talking about it because I have a show that airs every Thursday on WFA ABC Dallas. It's called Rooted. And folks are tired of hearing about the black hair conversations that we've been having simply to make sure that we're bringing attention to the Crown Act and to make sure people are aware of these things. So the fact that I'm still consistently receiving those types of emails on a daily basis, if you go over to our WFAA Facebook page and look at some of the comments underneath the stories that I've been sharing, I heard Representative Bowers mention Dakari Davis, the dark police officer here in Dallas, who ended up cutting his hair because he was told the hairstyle, cornrows, braided hairstyle, a black man, told that this hairstyle was unapproved and unprofessional. And so when you think about some of those comments and some of the things that are still happening right now, we know that this conversation needs to happen, and we know that it needs to continue to happen, because if I continue to get those emails, people are still leaving those types of comments on social media and elsewhere. You know, it hasn't resonated. Even with the Crown Act, you know, I hate to say it still may not click to some people why this is an important topic. So I would hope that people would understand that this is important for everybody. Studies have already shown that when you're able to show up authentically as yourself, you perform better. So this isn't something that's just good for black women, black people, black children. This is something that's good for your company, your business. I know a lot of folks always talking about money as the bottom line. Well, hey, bottom line is if we're able to show up as ourselves, we're going to perform better. So I hope they consider that as we continue to have these conversations. And like Representative Bowers, you know, mentioned, regardless of what happens with the Crown Act, we know what we want to happen. But regardless of what happens with it, I think this conversation needs to continue because people are still being impacted by this on a daily basis.
All right, Tashara Parker, Representative Bowers, we'll appreciate it. Hopefully, it will get through the Texas House and go to the Senate and actually sign into law. Republicans, y'all can at least do one thing right this legislative session. We appreciate both of y'all. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roland.
Bye.
All right, thanks a lot. As I said at the top, folks, we're here broadcasting live from Jack Yates High School here in Houston, Texas. This is ground zero for a lot of the voter suppression battles that have been going on because of how innovative folks have been in this particular county. In fact, Republicans were so angered by voter turnout by Democrats here, they actually passed a law to outlaw straight ticket voting. Yeah. That's what they actually did. Joining us right now is Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis, and who he's always riding his bike around, and so that's why he got his bike over here, got a little biking outfit on. I ain't gonna say nothing about them black socks he got on with them gray shoes, but I ain't gonna
generational.
Say. Oh, you ain't lying. That's
it.
generational. Like you ain't lying, cause I can't wear no black socks unless I got some black shoes on. That's just me. I can't see. You see right here. I can't.
I'm just glad you have socks on.
I can't.
As youthful as you want to be.
Hey, as youthful as I am.
You just remember, this is my Major Taylor outfit. So I know you spent some time in Chicago. This is your Black History moment.
What is
this?
Long
before Jack Yates was playing football and basketball, Major Taylor, who died in Chicago, was the most internationally known athlete in the world. And what did he do? He was cycling.
He was cycling.
He was cycling. Internationally known. Google him. Seriously, you ought to do a show on that. But look, I'm glad you're here. You're right across from the home of George Floyd, by the way. Not only did he go to high school, he grew up in the CUNY homes. How'd you like coming down Cleburne Street? Those are County Dallas. This is like you at Rice University or Harvard with those trees, a canopy. That's why I could ride over here. You notice it's so pleasant. It feels like it's Feels like I'm in Denver, Colorado, instead of Houston, Texas today. Welcome home.
See, y'all, that's what happens when you're the county commissioner. When you say those county dollars, what he's saying is he made that happen. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm just trying to pay it back to my alma mater. So, I went to Worthing. I didn't go to Jack Yates, but I did go to Texas Southern.
Oh, I got you. I got you. Well, everybody couldn't go to the best high school in Houston. They had to go to other little school. It's all good. My uncle taught a long time there.
Who's your uncle? Who's your uncle?
Jewel Martin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he taught at Worthing a number of years.
Martin, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Good. Oh, yeah. So
good genes.
Huh?
Good genes.
Of course. That's how we do it. I talked about setting this thing up, this being ground zero. I mean, when 2018, I traveled around here when all those sisters were running for judge. Man, Republicans, they saw what happened. They got so mad they changed the state law to get rid of straight ticket voting, because Republicans used to dominate straight ticket voting. But then Democrats finally got smart in this county and said, why are we not taking advantage of the same law they've been taking advantage of? Then it worked so well, they got rid of the law.
You know that old saying, the same thing that will make you laugh will make you cry. So straight ticket voting did let Republicans take over this county. This is a big county, 4.8 million people. This is a medium-sized state. So Harris County is larger than 26 states in the country. And if Democrats can get Harris County, Tarrant County, which we did this last go-around, we have Travis County, we have Bath County.
Tarrant County is Fort Worth.
San Antonio, El Paso.
San Antonio, Bexar County, San Antonio. Travis County is Austin.
Fort Worth.
Dallas County is Austin.
Yeah,
Dallas County is Dallas.
That's it. And the reason that they switched from straight ticket voting is it was scaring the heck out of them. Let me tell you, if this state just goes purple, it'll have a tremendous impact on what happens in any presidential race. And that's why they switched to straight ticket voting. So it's a little more difficult. We just have to educate our people from top to bottom.
But that's the presidential race. The thing, though, that I am constantly trying to get our audience to understand is we cannot ignore state rep and state senate races. You were one of two. There are only two black state senators in Texas. You served in the Texas legislature for a number of years as a state senator here from Houston, Royce West in Dallas. And when you look at it was a stat earlier that I gave. There are 99 legislative bodies in America. Republicans control 61 of those 99. Folks who say, all right, man, I ain't really voting about on the small races. Yeah. But that's where the laws are being made, in the state capitals, not D.C.
Yeah, and for congressional seats, it's on the state level where the lines are drawn for congressional seats. You remember in 2003, we broke the quorum after the Republicans decided to redistrict. Remember, you had to recall in California, you'd have to recount in Florida, and then they did the redistrict in Texas. Remember this? We broke the quorum.
Of course, I remember.
We broke the quorum.
First of all, y'all went to y'all escaped.
The House went to Oklahoma.
Y'all escaped
and the
state.
Senate, we went to New Mexico. Yeah. And then, it was down. We lost one of our members, and eventually they drew the lines. But look, the point is these state races, everything on the ballot matters. So like even as county commissioner, my race was the last race on the ballot. Because you go federal, then you go state, then you go county. Judgeships matter, state rep seats matter. And that's why these voter suppression bills are really so awful around the country. And in Texas, it's more difficult to vote here than anywhere in the country. We're one of the more difficult states to register to vote. So what we did with Chris Hollins as our elections administrator, we put the money in. We used some of the federal money, by the way, because we're during a pandemic. So we took some of that money that we got from our federal partners because of the pandemic and said, during the pandemic, we want to make it as easy to vote as possible. As easy to vote as it would be to go to the grocery store. And you had a record turnout, 24-hour voting, doing everything we could to make it easier for people to vote. And then there's a backlash to that. So the real tragedy is that with this Jim Crow 2 mentality, Republicans would prefer to change the rules than try to win in the marketplace of ideas. At the end of the day, I remember when Jesse ran in 1984, you had a lot of people who were afraid because Reverend Jackson was pulling out people who normally didn't vote.
Yep.
But that's a good thing.
Well, first of all, that's how Richard Shelby became the United States Senator in Alabama. He was elected as a Democrat. Of course, he later flipped to the Republican Party. He's not a United States Senator. He was not, first he's not retired. Yeah. He's not a United States Senator without Reverend Jackson running in 84 and 88.
But now I will tell you why it's so important on the federal level for them to reenact the Voting Rights Act. Because if you got all these laws in all of these states, not just southern states, you would expect some low down, dirty, chicken shit stuff like that in the South.
But we're seeing it in Iowa, in Maine,
all around the country. And it's all a part of the big lie. You know, the man lost fair and square. He lost it. And then they want to try and rig the rules, change it to try and benefit themselves. And so, look, I hope we've given our county attorney, young African-American brother, the ability to go to court to fight these laws. I think you heard some of my former colleagues in the legislature here in Texas saying the bill on the House side is a little better than the one on the Senate. So the House bill is not quite as chicken shit as the one that came out of the Senate. They can go to a conference committee, Republicans control it, and they may decide to put it all back in, they may not. I'm told that the lawyers told the Republicans some of this stuff is just so outrageous. Even in the dreaded, historically racist Fifth Circuit, you would probably lose it. And that's probably why they took some things out. And the Democrats had a great point of order that they brought up early on in the Texas House. So about 3 a.m. in the morning, the Republicans decided to make some concessions. Still a bad bill. It's going to be a challenge. It's important that they reenact the Voting Rights Act before September. So then all this stuff has to be pre-cleared.
So let me drill down further. And again, and I'm going to keep emphasizing this point for people to understand it. When we talk about, we talked about federal level. We talked about what's happening in Austin. But again, when you say you say your race was the last one, the reason you had innovation with the county election administrator here in Harris County was because you had folks like you in, who voted the county judge in. So you had control of the process. Yeah. And so to go all the way down, yes, that county commissioner, that county judge greatly impacts the entire county and voting. And it's just, and I keep going this over and over and over with people, and I fight with folks because they say, man, this stuff really doesn't matter. But now we're talking about millions and billions of dollars. Now we're talking about what you said earlier, roads and parks and trees and improvements. All of that is public policy.
It is. And on the county level, this is a big county. County spends we control about $5 billion. A 5-person governing board.
5 people.
5 people, $5 billion. And Republicans ran it like a plantation, controlled it for decades. And in part because of great candidates, in part because of straight ticket voting, in part because Beto O'Rourke raised $90 million running for governor, spent a good part of it here in Harris County. Lena Hidalgo, 27 years old, became county judge. She presides over our board. Adrian Garcia, former sheriff, former police officer, former city council member, won one of the seats on commissioner's court. I was the only Democrat. So during the 4 years and 5 months I've been here, I went from being the only person of color, only Democrat, fighting what I hope was a good battle by myself, with them wanting to kill me. I'd have to ride my bike with a staffer. Now the Democrats in power, I can ride my bike over here by myself. Until I come off your show, I might get somebody to give me a ride home. But look, it's tremendous power when it matters. We could do things like after Harvey on flooding. We came up with equity guidelines on where we spend the money. So we fight that dreaded federal formula that says you spend money in the wealthier neighborhoods first. You'd never gotten to the 9th Ward in Katrina using that federal formula. They got to it because of earmarking. You no longer have earmarks. We have equity guidelines on how we spend our money to go in and invest in infrastructure. We can take county dollars. People in the city pay taxes. Why not do the university corridor? Why not fix the road and a 10-foot sidewalk on both sides of the street in front of the CUNY homes? Jackie Yates, Texas Southern, going to the University of Houston. But it matters. Every race matters. And they don't want to give up this power. This county and this city are a reflection of the demographics of America. Most diverse city in the country, one of the most diverse counties. It's not all black and white. It's black, white, brown, South Asian, Muslim, Christian, gay, straight, everything that you can think of. It's a melting pot. And that scares the hell out of people who've had power, who think everybody ought to look the same way, act the same way, and have the same religion.
Well, that's why.
And that's what they're fighting
What you mean? They don't want to give up the power, which is why I keep harping on this. And if people can get mad, they can get upset. They can holler Jim Crow, Joe Biden, all you want to. Y'all can talk about all the stuff you want to. But this is real simple. If we allow our power to be untapped, they will still be in control of it. And we're talking, yes, public policy. We're talking about billions of dollars. And if they're able to gerrymander, that means you see what's happening with the Supreme Court, what happens with the federal judiciary. We can become a nation with majority of people of color, but they're still in power. Yeah. And that's the piece that people have to get.
Yeah, and let me tell you, it's a big challenge. So regardless of what happens with that bill in Texas, the one in Georgia, we'll go to court, we'll fight it out. We hope on the federal level that they will have the 50 votes. Whatever Senator Manchin wants, please give it to him. Whatever the senator
but at some point though, Senator Joe Manchin is going to have to stop sniffing Gorilla Glue and all this constant talk. Because here's my whole deal: he keep hollering bipartisanship. This is what every national anchor should say. Okay, Joe, show me the 10.
We never get them.
But no,
you got to gut the bill to go.
No, what I'm saying is, you can gut the bill. It don't matter. They are not going to support the bill. No, so my deal is, every time Joe Manchin keeps hollering bipartisanship, Joe, show me 10. If you show me 10, I'll believe you. But if you can't go get 10, 5 don't matter. If you say, I'm not going to vote for the filibuster, you need 60. Joe, show me the 10, and you bring the 10, then we'll talk.
Well, what I hope is that it's a process. He's just going through it. I mean, he's in a Republican state, the only statewide Democrat in that state. So maybe that helps him to stay in power, but at least through this cycle. If he wants to go through the little game to figure it out, do it. But at the end of the day, we need the Voting Rights Act. Hey, everybody knows now the history of the filibuster.
Right,
maybe they didn't before.
But this is my deal with Manchin. Show me the 10. It's real simple. Show me the 10.
You'll never find 10.
You can't find the 10. So, damn it, stop giving me this BS about bipartisanship. Let's be clear. They are not going to support H.R. 1. They're not going to support the George Floyd Justice Act. And so if you do, you have to warn.
They won't support the stimulus package. They won't support the infrastructure, but they'll spend the money.
So show me the 10. And then send out press releases touting. Again, all I want to do is, Joe, show me the 10, then I'll believe you.
Well, here's what I'm doing. The few people I know in West Virginia, whether they look like me.
Ride his ass.
If they're Hispanic. If
ride
they're
like
white,
you ride that bike.
You know, you ride them, you make the case. Now, here's what I'm thinking. I always have to remember, I was telling my county judge last night, they gerrymandered and they got, somebody asked, well, Rodney, what's your precinct? What's your district like? Where is it? You know what I tell them? Where are the Democrats? They drew the lines to put them all in this precinct. So I have to make sure when I come up with an issue that put it on the table, I don't want to do, it was okay being by myself. I don't want to be here by myself again.
Right.
You got me? So I know my other 2 Democratic colleagues have to appeal to some of their more conservative votes. Of course. So Joe Manchin, if you got to go through the process, go through the process.
Go ahead. We'll 5 and 10.
So show that you tried. Right. And then when you can't get them, they had a big show at the White House. I was listening to NPR on my bike on the way over it. Go through the show that they don't want to cooperate. And then at the end of the day, you tried to get bipartisan support. You couldn't get it, and then just do what's right.
Bottom line is here. If Sinema and Manchin could keep this up with the filibuster, the Democrats will be in the minority after 2024.
And they will be out of office, by the way.
And so my whole deal...
they'll be pretty miserable in there by themselves.
So my deal is, Democrats, start acting like Republicans. Use power, keep power.
Roland, as far as I'm concerned, they ought to do the study on whether or not you ought to expand the size of the court. It's been expanded before. I mean, this crew, they're taking over the courts.
First of all, Republicans expanded the Supreme Court in Arizona. Yeah. Nobody said anything. So, again, then West Virginia, they got rid of the entire state Supreme Court, which were a majority Democrats, replacing Republicans. So they can't act like it ain't happening on the state level.
It's only a number. There's nothing magic about it.
No, it's
but
not.
Let me tell you, they were skillful in the way they took over the federal courts. So where do you go to get justice?
No. They were skillful, but there were people like me who were yelling it, but then you had other folk who said,
trying to be bipartisan.
Man, that stuff don't matter. And I'm like, now you see the reality of what happened when you put federal judges in. So focus in that. Commissioner Ellis, I appreciate it. Let everybody know, you got to, what's the little artwork?
The gloves
y'all see
my African art collection.
Y'all see his art collection?
I'm looking at the camera, you can see
He's wearing his art collection, y'all.
That's right. Thank you.
All right, appreciate
Welcome
it.
home, man.
It's RodneyEllis.com, so y'all can go see all his art, so all his stuff. So that's how he rolls. All right, hop on that bike. We gonna go to commercial break. Y'all get a shot of Commissioner riding his bike off. We come back. We gonna talk with the co-founder of NextDoor, building community. That's critically important. We also talk with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.